Hello, class, everybody.
Hi.
So you know we're being filmed. This is for my school, and I thank you very much for participating.
You're welcome.
Okay. We had a little intro off camera, and I told you that we're going to be veering a little bit away from what we usually do, which is learning Sefer Vayikra. But what we are going to do is follow the concept of Kedusha, which is holiness, right? Kodesh is holy, Kedusha is holiness. And some of you might remember when we did Parshat Shmini and we did the animal song. Why are we supposed to be holy?
Because
God said.
And God said,
He was holy, then we should be too.
okay, you shall not make yourselves unclean by eating of these things, right? Because I am the Lord your God, and I am
holy.
Right.
So we should be holy.
And you shall be holy, for holy am I. Okay. So I thought this concept of holiness, we learned a few things in Parshat Kedoshim, which is actually like a laundry list of things you have to do. I think there are more mitzvot in Parshat Kedoshim than any other parsha in the whole Chumash. And it gives you, like we talked about, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you should love your neighbor as yourself. So that's a way of being holy. But there are other places where holiness is discussed. And one of those places is in the Amidah, in the standing prayer that we say 3 times a day. The first 3 blessings are the blessings of praise for God. And I've taken out the 3rd blessing of the first group of 3. Because, how many times does it say kadosh or something like kadosh?
4 times.
4 times. Well, that was quick. So let's read it together, and then somebody will read it in English, okay? So, 1, 2, 3. Ata kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, u'kedoshim, b'chol yom yehalelucha selah, baruch ata Adonai, ha'el ha'kadosh. Okay, so, I have a problem with this. How are we're supposed to be holy. And prayer, we've talked about in the past in other classes and a little bit here, prayer is supposed to be something that helps us, right? We're judging ourselves, we're trying to make a connection with God. We talked about what the word kadosh really means. It means something that's set apart, right? Or it's, what's another word for set apart?
Unique.
It's unique, okay, but it's not something that's really with us all the time. And God, of all things that are unique and set apart, God is almost unattainable that way. God is completely unique. God isn't even a concept. Yeah, right. So my big question here is, how is saying that God is holy, and we repeat it, you are holy, we didn't read it in English. So, do I have a volunteer, Mitnadev, to read in English?
Sure. You are holy, and your name is holy, and your holy ones praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the God who is holy.
Okay, so other words that I had written down for Kadosh would be separate, or apart, or distinct. So, like God's getting further and further, and in this tefillah, which the rabbi said was the height, the pinnacle, you know that word pinnacle?
No.
It's like the tippy part.
Like Mount Everest.
Like Mount Everest, right. It's the pinnacle of prayer. So, yeah, you have an answer? You have a theory?
What about divided?
Divided?
That's another word.
Divided in the sense that it's set apart and it's away. But God, you see, we can't say that God is divided because we always say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. So God is one. God is oneness. God is everything. But, yeah, Isabel.
The word that was talked about that begins with a P, I forgot
Pinnacle, yeah.
Pinnacle, right?
Could that also mean like the peak?
Yeah, it could. So this is like the supreme prayer, and we're starting out by praising God, and we want to be connected, but we're saying God is holy. So let's look at the language and see if there's anything here that can help us. So I see something that's a little bit unusual in the first line. And we've always spoken about Tanakh, that Tanakh doesn't have any extra, any superfluous, you know that nice big word, any extra words that we don't need. And I see a way that I could have condensed the beginning of this bracha. So, Ata Kadosh, you are holy, V'shimcha Kadosh, and your name is holy. Is there a shorter way we could have said that? Let's give Zach a chance. So we're saying in English, you are holy,
And your
name is holy.
But see, the problem is, could you say, you and your name are holy?
Bingo. Right, but it didn't. So it's separating out, again, this Kedusha business. It's saying something, there's the concept of God, and then there's God's name. So I have another question. If you were stranded on a desert island, there's nobody else around, do you need a name? I have another question. When you're home, do your parents call you by different names? Do your friends call you different names? When I was growing up, if my parents said to me, Sarah Greenberg, blah, 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 they never called me by my name. They called me by my name. I must have done something. It was Bubala, Zisala, Sweetheart, Honey, Sarah, uh-oh. So what is it about a name that's special, Robert?
They're calling you by your name, and they're not calling you by anything else. They're like, but like actual name, like it.
Yes, if I said to you, hey you, well, that's not very friendly, huh? Remember we talked about this when God called to Moses, right? Vayikra, Vayidaber, right? So it's important how you call someone, Dylan.
Because, like, it doesn't feel good for someone to call you just like, hey, you in the blue shirt, or like...
Right, so what if I call you by your name, Dylan?
That feels
Or
nice.
Daron?
And I know what you're saying, so,
Uh-huh,
so I look at you.
okay.
It causes more peace because then people aren't like, because it's also offensive, and then people aren't like fighting over like, she was talking to me, no, she was talking to me.
Okay, all these hands raised. Okay. Chad, Shtayim, Shalosh, Alba.
When people call you by your name, it's kind of like unexpected because you're used to like, I mean, honey and sweetheart. I feel like that's more normal than being called by your own name or your nickname. Like your nickname and those names are like what you're used to. But then when they call you by your real name, you kind of just feel like exposed. Like you're not used to it.
Okay. And what about God's name?
Well, that's like we don't want to expose him without saying it in like a prayer, because like if you just go around saying his name, it's not polite.
So you are relating this back to the Ten Commandments. We're not supposed to take God's name in vain,
Yeah.
right? This is tefillah, when we do call upon God, right? So, okay, Isabel? Who is next? Okay.
Maybe it's not any of these reasons. Maybe it's the tone that they use when they're saying it.
Maybe all the reasons, too. There isn't just one answer.
Like you could say, like, Isabel or Isabel.
Mm-hmm. But here we're saying, we're telling ourselves in the prayer something about God's name. God is holy, and also his name is holy. But at the end, what name are we using for God? Baruch atah Adonai, which is the formula, and we're calling him Ha'el, Ha'el HaKadosh, the Lord that's holy. Yes.
And then, so I also have two theories about why So the first thing I have to say is that maybe God is himself, and then God is like is like a whole different like thing, like a whole different like not really object, but sort of like personality or something.
Species.
Yeah.
Like none of the above, right? We can't categorize
And then-
God.
Also, my other answer was that maybe it says like, "And your name is holy," is because in a lot of people, when they're praying to God, they usually call God. They usually say God's name in the way they think is right. So that's probably why they say you are holy and your name is.
So, and if our videographer has something to add, please feel free to join in.
I think that when you call upon God, that is becoming holy in yourself.
How so?
When you say God's name, it's bringing God to your attention, and it's bringing holiness to you.
I like all of those ideas. And I think what we've concluded is by referring to God's name here, we are actually drawing God closer. So how does this help us, though? Or does this help us know how we're supposed to be holy? So what did God say in the animal song? You shall be holy because for holy am I. So what is that? What's the message for us then?
Because God's holy, we should also be holy.
How?
By
By being godly? Yeah, so what does that mean?
kosher and keeping kosher
Uh-huh.
and praying.
Okay, why?
So we can be holy and we can tell God that like we're holy and
We're doing what God asked us to do, right? So we're following his rules. So when we do mitzvot, that helps us become holy. Is there some way we can so there's 613 mitzvot, right? And many of them we can't do because they can only be done when the temple has been rebuilt, and they can only be done in Eretz Yisrael. So is there some general way that we can narrow down, or here's a big word, encapsulate, put into a capsule, right? Just summarize how to be holy. So our rabbis have said, well, we don't know what God is. We're supposed to be like God, but we can't be like God. We're flesh and blood, right? If I do that, I didn't hurt you, but right?
You feel it.
But so we're supposed to look to what God does, how God acts in the world, and use that as a model. Becca, and then Zach, and then Rachel.
You said that we should look at what God does, but like, how can we see what God does?
So we see God, and that was the question, we see God in his actions. When we read the Chumash and we see what God has done, but I have a better answer for you. The rabbis have actually packaged this up, and if you remember from Yom Kippur, any of you make it in shul for some part, for all the, yeah? So we say, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun. Sound familiar? Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet. Right? And then the next part. Notzer Chesed Lalafim, Nose Avon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakeh. We repeat that, we repeat it. For those of you who may have been counting, there were 13 of those. 13 what? 13 things, 13 attributes of God that are a guideline for how we're supposed to act. We're supposed to follow what God does. How do we know what God does? Right? There's a pasuk in Shmot when Moshe is actually talking to God, and this is the list that God, you are compassionate, you are merciful, you're gracious. So Moshe Rabbeinu is our greatest teacher, and we follow Moshe's formula here, and these are the 13 attributes. Yes?
Another thing is, when we saw the video, they said that God also wants us to be kosher, and He also wants us to not, well, for boys to not shave facial hair, and there's some other stuff.
Right, that's why when we do study, probably next week, we'll go through Kedoshim, and we're going to make a list. I just read a very interesting article. It's in the forward, if you've heard of it. It's a famous Yiddish newspaper. It's been around over 100 years. There's an artist who has made a mural, and it's now on display, but he made a picture for each of the 613 mitzvot. Each of the 613 pictures that he made in this huge warehouse, and maybe we could think of doing that for the mitzvot in Kedoshim, but Zach had a question.
Okay, so my question is, for God, you know how some foods are not kosher? So, those foods that are not kosher, when the animals are still alive, like maybe lobster or pig, or those other animals or shrimp, are they considered holy? Those
No.
animals?
No, animals are not holy, and we don't. So let's backtrack on your question. What your bigger question is, as I hear it, is, so what is holy, really? What things are holy? We know God is holy. We know God's name is holy. And then we have these Kedoshim, the holy ones, who praise Him. So who are the holy ones? Some people say those are the angels. Some people say they're us. So there are ways, so we've been talking about there are ways that we can be holy. But you're asking, I think, so what things are holy? So is my Siddur holy?
Probably.
Because it has God's name in it. Is the Torah scroll holy?
Yes.
Yes. Are those holy Torah scrolls? No.
No.
No. Those are just toys. But the real one, what else? What else? When the temple was in existence, there was the Holy of Holies, right? Kadosh HaKadoshim, where the Kohen HaGadol went into only once a year. So everybody has questions. Echad, Shtaim, Shalosh, Arba, and how are we doing on time?
You have 17 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay.
Down. You have 17 minutes already done.
Oh, okay. Thank
So
you.
you said that animals are not holy, but aren't we technically animals?
We are humans. If you were to look at a hierarchy, you have inanimate objects on the bottom, right? They don't move, they don't speak, they don't breathe, right? Above that, you have plant life that does, people even say plants have some sort of feelings, but they move, they grow, they have more life. Even an inanimate object, though, it has atoms that are moving around all the time, but, you know, on a gross level. So you have inanimate life, you have plant life, then you have the animals, then you have human beings, because what can we do? We can create. We have a divine spark in us. That's the part of us that is holy. So each one of us has that spark of divinity in us, because how did God create Adam? Formed him from the ground, from the Adamah, and blew the spirit, blew Ruach Elokim, the spirit of God, of holiness, into him. There's another explanation of Adamah. I'll get to you in 1 second. So Adamah also comes from the Hebrew root of domeh, which means to be like, which is also what we're talking about. So when we're divine, that divine spark in us is being like God. So we have Chad, Shtayim, Shalosh.
So, speaking of the animals, what about the apes? They also use techniques that we also use. What about them?
So I would say within the animal world, you have more sophisticated animals and less sophisticated animals. And then there's, you know, look, you have people who act like animals sometimes, right? So these aren't categories that are completely closed. You have the top of one category and the bottom of another category, but I couldn't be having this lovely conversation with a group of chimpanzees here, right? So,
You can also,
but absolutely, there are animals that are smarter and faster and tastier. There are all kinds of, God made a variety for us.
I just have something to kind of add.
Yes,
to that.
and then Isabel,
Um,
right?
But we're mammals, and mammals are animals.
Well, I'm giving you the Jewish point of view. You're giving me the scientific point of view.
Yeah,
The
we're
Jewish,
just learning about
the Jewish point of view comes from a different, the Jewish point of view comes from a different perspective.
Mhm.
And it looks at what these different groupings are capable of.
Mhm.
Now, if you want to classify things according to color, and you have black hair, and there's a black rock, you can say all black things, right? So we do share characteristics with animals, with mammals in particular, but we can pray. We can try to understand God. We can speak. We can convey ideas. Yes, and I know that whales, dolphins, yes, but at the end of the day, they're not human.
Mhm.
Which is not to
And
degrade any.
also-
I love animals. They're just
Yeah,
they're just
also,
different.
But they couldn't have a conversation with us, but they could have a conversation with each other. So
Yeah,
like,
maybe they're talking about God too.
yeah, and the ocean, and
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they're
More
saying
power
if
to them.
humans were there, then
Yeah.
we'd be dead also.
Isabel.
So would this paper be holy because this is supposed to be holy?
Yes, and you can't throw it out.
So I have to put it in the
So, in the Geniza, the hidden away place, and eventually it will probably be buried. Yes. Good point. Yeah. Yep. I just rummaged through it and salvaged several talaisim and some books and a lot of goodies, so we'll have costumes for my history class. So that'll be coming soon. You'll all be able to see that video when we do it. Yes, Anne?
So that brings me to my next point. So,
Yes.
so you're saying that if humans can speak the word holy, or if you can just think the word holy, or since God meant for us to be holy, then we're holy. But since animals are they can't really think or say the word holy, or say or think the word Adonai, would they would be considered not holy? And
Animals in and of themselves
They can.
are not holy. However, I have a question. I don't know the answer to this. I'd have to look it up. Once you bring an animal for a korban, and the animal is then not one of those that is turned to ashes and goes all the way up. Can you see that so I can see that one? So the animals that were eaten from the korbanot, that's a good question. Are they then considered holy? Some of the animals, we remember, couldn't be eaten by the people who bring them and were only eaten by the Kohanim. So at that point, it may be that the animal has taken in holiness. Some people will say when you say a bracha before eating an animal, you have elevated that animal and now you're using it for a holy purpose. Because we don't eat just to live. We don't eat just because we're hungry. If we're Jewish, why are we here? Why did God create us with all these mitzvot?
well, I think God created us because He needed the earth needed something. The earth needed something to take care of it. So He created humans to take care of the earth.
And what about Jewish people?
Jewish people
What's our job?
to be holy and to take care of the earth and be kosher and cleanse ourselves
Yeah. And why?
because God said so.
Because God said so. That's right. God said so. God gave us 613 ways, and then we condensed them into 13, which I unfortunately didn't tell you in English, but we can put that aside for now because you have so many questions. Chaim?
Also, probably because he wanted someone to preserve his name. but to show that he still exists.
Oh, you think people would forget?
Yes.
Yeah, they did forget, right? The generation of the flood,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in Abraham's time.
Yeah, and that's why, I think that's why Noah was there. He was the only Jewish person. He preserved God's name. And then after that, a lot more people believed in him.
So actually Noah wasn't Jewish.
Uh-huh.
I know, it's easy to think he was because the Torah describes him as righteous.
What is he?
He just a guy, righteous guy. And
And he
from,
just believed in God?
he believed in, not only did he believe in God, he walked with God. The Torah says that Noah was righteous in his generation, and he walked with God. So he did acknowledge God. But everybody else, they didn't care. They had turned to idol worship. And yes.
Just a quick time check. We've been rolling for over 25 minutes, so we might want
okay.
to wrap it up.
So anybody want to say some closing words? My professor is Dr. Wax. And if you would like to send your regards to Dr. Wax in my
Thank you,
class.
Dr. Wax.
And
You're
her-
teaching her well.
Please give her an A.
Thank you, thank
A
you.
plus would be better.
Okay, you've been a wonderful class.
She
Thank
deserves
you.
it.
Thank you, thank
Very
you,
much.
thank
He's
you.
a good teacher.
Yeah.
All right, kids, your rewards will,